Welcome to the Creative Shift. My name is Dan Blank, author of the book Be the Gateway and founder of WeGrowMedia.com. So when I was talking with my most recent podcast guest, Nicole Blades, she shared this story of when she began writing. And I always love stories like this. So she was talking about how in the mid-'80s she was a kid, and she became really enamored with the TV show Miami Vice. And I remember this when the show came on at the time. It was so different. Just the mood of it is what I remember. Of course, historically, it was a show that looked very different, but sounded very different. The soundtrack of the show kind of changed how we view TV in a lot of ways. But she did something really interesting, which is she said that she began placing herself in the stories, and she essentially wrote fan fiction based on Miami Vice. And I love this story because it really illustrates the various ways that we start creating. Whether you are a writer or an illustrator or artist or dancer or any kind of creator. And that oftentimes the impetus to start creating is that we start by observing. We start as consumers. We start as readers. We start as fans. And then we can take something and jump off of it, like the idea of fan fiction. We take an existing universe, but then create new, unique things within it. And sometimes it's just mimicry. I was listening to a podcast with a musician I'll be interviewing soon, and he was talking about how very often when you're young and you're in a band, you start playing covers, you start mimicking your heroes, and that is a way for you to start developing your own voice. And this is something I think about a lot because it's this idea that the people who read what you create or view what you create, they are essentially co-creating with you, whether you know it or not. If you're someone who is writing a novel or a memoir or even nonfiction, you are coming to this with a huge, incredible amount of effort to create this thing. But if they're reading silently to themselves, they're reading in their head. They're giving a character a voice. They are giving a setting a certain look. They are maybe even without knowing it, giving different characters or situations kind of motivations that you as the writer didn't put on the page. And that is, I think, the most amazing thing. I've said this before, but I think about this all the time, where if I go to a Bruce Springsteen concert and there are tens of thousands of people around me, all singing the lyrics to Born to Run, some song they all know, regardless of what it means to Bruce and the band, each of us can have a different vision in our head of what the song means to us, how it relates to our life, or the fantasy that we create for that song. And I always think that that is so amazing. And I think that when you do talk to musicians or performers, they realize that these songs have a life of their own within the mind and experience of each listener. And this, of course, applies to everything that we do. The work that I do with writers is about the idea of getting creative clarity and then understanding who you hope to reach and how to best share what you create. And I know that there's a lot of pressure that writers and creators feel to get more followers, get more subscribers, get more book reviews, win more awards, make this list, make that list. And my fear of that process is always that it reduces the reader, or if you're an artist or performer, reduces the audience to a number. And it's not uncommon for me to be talking to someone and for them to say, yeah, I've got a newsletter, but I only have 45 subscribers. Or, yeah, I'm on Twitter, but I only have 600 followers. And they are, in some ways, always looking past these people. They are appreciative of what they have, but then they're kind of looking over that person's shoulder saying, where are the other people? And that is a very natural thing. I think that we all can do that in different ways because we know that what we create can affect more people. And we hope that we can engage with these people and that our work can engage with those people. But I also want to emphasize that, every one of those readers counts. And if you have 9 subscribers to your newsletter list or 40 followers on Instagram, to not overlook them, to instead do the opposite, which is really pay more attention to them. Instead of thinking, hey, I've got 40 followers, how can I get 80? Think, hey, I've got 40 followers, how can I totally delight and surprise them today? Or who are they? What do they want? I want to find out. I watch a lot of documentaries and interviews and biographies, that sort of thing. I was watching a documentary about the band ZZ Top, who I'd previously known pretty much nothing about, aside from I'm remembering in the 80s when their music came up and their videos on MTV. But they told a really fascinating story. They were talking about the early days of the band, one of their very early shows, and they were playing a show in Alvin, Texas. And, they said, yeah, we hoped to sell out the venue, but quite frankly, if it was even half full, we would have been really happy with that. And they were backstage, it says, behind a curtain. And when they go to perform, they come out from behind the curtain, and there's one guy standing in the audience. So they start playing, and they said, well, this guy kind of felt out of place, so he starts to leave. So the band stops playing, and they say, oh, wait a minute. Hey, please stay. We're going to play the full set. We're going to, give you our all. And the guy stays. They play for about an hour, I believe. And then they take a break, and they go up to the guy, and they buy him a Coca-Cola, and they talk to him for a while. And then they played an encore. And the band members pointed out that, just how absurd this was in a way, because an encore is usually something you play when people are begging for more. But for them, it was the total opposite. They were doing everything they could to win over this single fan. And that was just so inspiring to me, that idea of putting it out there, giving it your all for that one fan. And they said, to this day, that guy still comes around, and he comes up to them and says, hey, remember me? I'm the guy. And they said, yeah, of course we remember you. And it just, to me, it speaks to that personal nature of what it means for a writer, a creator, an artist, anyone to engage with a fan. It happens on that personal level. And if you go to a book reading, an art opening, a workshop, a concert, you see that. If you go on Broadway and, after the show, you go around wherever and there's the stage door, there's the crowd of people waiting behind the ropes to meet whatever people from the production will come out and meet them. And you see that personal connection. And when you do that, very often what I've found, certainly with anything popular, there are people who come night after night. There are fans who come to every show. And it's a real good reminder of how personal this work is. And that when you think about what does it mean for you to have a platform or to share this work or be on Twitter or whatever it is, to bring it back to that idea that it is engaging with people who love the kind of work that you create. And this is something I was thinking about a lot this week too, as I was reflecting on the podcast with Nicole Blades, which I just released. Definitely check it out. It's really fun and really inspiring. And, we sort of incrementally go through her career, this idea of her deciding, yeah, I think I'm going to go into law. And I've had a lot of different people on the podcast say this, which is, well, there's a lot of writing in law. So this is a way for me to have a career that can really sustain me and, financially while also writing. And she told a story of going in to take the big exam and kind of realizing then and there that this is not for her, and kind of walking out and never looking back on her law degree, or the idea of pursuing her law degree. And then she goes into the magazine world and writing for magazines and freelance. And it was really amazing to kind of step through her career. And she said that, when her book was published, her first book was published, that's when she quit her, her job. I'm saying that in air quotes. the idea that that's when she went freelance and she can focus much more on writing holistically, her novels as well as her freelance work. It's an amazing journey. I highly recommend you check it out. We also talk about the videos that she makes that she shares on like Instagram and TikTok that are, I think, for writers. I think readers will appreciate them as well. But they're really funny. She's just so inventive and it's just very inspiring. And as I was thinking about all of this week, it was a reminder too that this is why I do what I do. This is why I have the podcast. It gives me an opportunity to meet people who inspire me. And that's what this podcast is. It is me discovering Nicole and saying, wow, this is interesting, and following her for a while and looking stuff up and being like, wow, I would just love to meet her. I'd love to know her story. And everyone I interview, that's what it is. It feels like such a privilege to be able to do that. And that these people give me an hour of their time is just amazing to me. I'm so thankful for that. And of course, on the other side of it, I record this podcast at least once a week. And I've sent out a weekly email newsletter every week for 15 years. And every single person who receives that, I appreciate. Every week I send out that newsletter, people unsubscribe from it. That is every week for years and years and years. And I don't say that with a sense of anything negative. The people who unsubscribe are choosing what to let into their life. And I very, very much support that. I want them to only have in their life what they want. And if it's not my newsletter, of course, I respect that. I want for them to have their clarity and focus be tuned however they want it to be. And I'm appreciative of the time they did spend with me. And for you listening to this or watching this, if you're watching the video on wegrowmedia.com, I just want to say thank you. It genuinely means so much to me that you have showed up for anything that I create, let alone if you're someone who has listened to multiple episodes, subscribed for a while, or read any of my work for a while. It genuinely means so much to me. All right, if you want to see more of anything that I create, you can go to wegrowmedia.com, or on social media, you can find me at Dan Blank. Thank you so much for listening until the end.